Hey everyone, so today we are doing a quick tips video on how to do 2 different techniques on how to blend out, shadows on flowers and stuff. So that's what we're doing.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. We're just getting started.
Goodbye.
Okay, so today I am going to show you 2 different ways to add shadows and depth to your florals to make them look a bit more realistic. I have 2 techniques that I usually use to do this. First one is going to be wet on wet, and the second one is called blending out soft lines. So I'm just going to jump right in and show you what I mean. So for wet on wet, initially what you're doing is you are laying down a wet surface and then you're adding more pigment to your flower. So usually for this, I start off with a light wash. So I'm just going to grab some pink here. I'm just going to throw it into my little peach mix. And I'm going to water it down so it's really, really light. And I'm just going to go over 1 petal at a time. Okay, so you only work on 1 petal. So I cover the whole petal with this light wash. Make sure it's all still wet. You can even hold it up to the light and make sure that there's a nice even sheen. You don't want it to pool in one area. Then you're going to go back in with darker pigment and you're just going to tap where you want that shadow. Okay, so I'm tapping the bottom. Usually the bottom of the flower where the petals all connect, there's a bit of a shadow there. And you can always, drag some of that color up around the tips and it just gives a really nice blurry kind of shadow feeling. So where you could get into trouble with this is if when you go back in to tap more color, you might add too much color or water. And then once it starts drying, the darker area starts to pool and it dries a lot slower than the rest of the flower and you get this funky mark. So when you go back in with that darker pigment, just try and make sure you don't have too much water on your brush because then it will cause that watermark. So you just want to be really, really gentle with it. If you do make a mistake, I've done it many times, just mop it up. So just put your paper towel over the whole thing, mop it up and try again, okay? So I'm just going to show you again. So I'm getting my light wash of pink. I'll do this petal and I'm not going to work on this one because it's still wet. So if I were to work on the one right beside it, it would blend into each other and you don't want that. So make sure it's dry before you work on the petal that's right beside it. So here we go. Make sure it's not pooling, and by pooling I mean when it does this and all the water rushes to one area. If you have too much water, just mop a bit of it up and then try to evenly blend it out. Okay, make sure there's an even amount of water over the whole petal. Go back in and you want that nice kind of like firework kind of effect when you do wet on wet. And you can just blend out that color. So now you can see when it starts drying, you get that really nice light highlight look and it gets a bit darker. And then you can always go in once it's dry and add more shadow. I'm going to show you how to do that here because for this technique, you do this when you've already kind of laid down your first layer. Okay, so we're going to move on to this one now. And I'm going to show you what this is. So you could do the whole wet on wet thing again where you wet the whole petal and then you go back in with a darker color. But another way to do this, I'm just going to add more color, add more peach, okay, is you get your darker pigment straight away and then you go to where you want that shadow, quickly wash and dry off your brush, just tap it on your paper towel and you're going to blend out those soft lines, okay? You're just blending it out. Now, as you see, there's kind of a mid-tone on my brush already, and I don't want to drag that out. I'm going to wash it off my brush again, dry it a bit, and blend out that. So essentially, you're moving the water all the way to the tip of the petal, and by the time you get to the tip, it's going to be barely there. So that way, all the dark pigment can move freely throughout the petal to the tip without having a harsh edge, okay? Now this paper dries a little bit faster. Also keep in mind that if you have cheaper paper, it might dry a little bit faster and that might make it a bit more difficult to do, but just keep trying your best. You can always mop it up and try again. I'm just moving it around like that. And I find this technique really helps when you have like maybe petals or leaves that are overlapping. I'm going to show you here quickly. So this leaf is underneath this one. So I'm just going to grab a darker green because if it's under another leaf, there would be more of a shadow. So I'm just gonna grab a bit of Hooker's Green Dark, a bit of Dioxazine Purple, okay? And I'm gonna go right along where that shadow would be, okay? Create my shadow color, wash, dry off my brush, just tap it on your paper towel and blend out that line, okay? And now that dark pigment is starting to move on my brush. Again, wash it off, dry it, and keep moving it so you don't get a harsh line. Just move it around. Wash off again, dry. And eventually you're going to cover the whole leaf so that dark pigment can move freely to the end. Because if you stop with the water there, wet paint wants to go where there's water. And if you were to stop with that light wash right there, then you're going to get that dark line. It's going to go all the way just to that line and stop. I'm going to show you a leaf just using the wet on wet technique. Okay. And I like doing this with some of my looser florals too. So if you're not doing a realistic floral and you're just doing a looser one, you could use the wet on wet to add a bit of depth. And all you have to do is paint your leaf and then go back in with your darker color just at the bottom and the stem maybe. You can even bring a little bit on the vein there. Just move it around. And there you go, and it just adds a little bit of depth, okay? So there are two ways to add shadow and depth to your flowers.
Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram and Facebook for even more. Have a great day, guys. Bye!